friends, thank you for joining us and welcome to a brand new series on the James H. Boyd Gospel Ministries YouTube channel. This is a series in which we're going to discuss the various controversies that have taken place in the Christian world through the years. And Lord knows there have been plenty of them. And if that's something that piques your interest, I would ask that you please subscribe and follow us as we go along. Today we're going to be looking at one that most everyone is familiar with, and one that we're still living in the fallout with decades later. That is the numerous Televangelist Scandals, the big name preachers who have had various moral failures over the years. If those old enough to remember the 1980s, we were hit back to back with scandals of Jim Bakker and Jimmy Swaggart, and then moving into the 90s there was Robert Tilton, Larry Lee, and W.B. Grant, and moving into the 2000s an example would be Ted Haggard, and there have been numerous other ones. Obviously this is not a problem that a video can solve, but I would like for us to maybe try to get a little understanding about why these type of things happen and how it might be prevented in the future. First question would be, were these men always corrupt from the start, or did they start off legitimate and go astray somewhere? And obviously I can't speak for everyone, but I have read a little bit more about Jimmy Swaggart than I have the others. And looking at his experience, as you probably know, he came from a musical family. He was the cousin of both Jerry Lee Lewis and Mickey Gilley. But for his own life, Jimmy Swaggart's ministry started off mainly preaching in small congregations in rural Louisiana. He and his family were basically living out of their car eating bologna sandwiches without any idea of what would happen to their ministry in the future. And Jimmy Swaggart was offered a big money contract to go into country music, but turned it down because he didn't want to walk away from God's calling on his life. Again, he said that without any knowledge that his ministry would take on the huge scope that it one day would. So, key to understanding maybe what went wrong is, let's look back to the early 1980s and the cable TV boom. Some of these were the new channels, or they may have been around, but they were finding new audiences that they hadn't before. You had channels like HBO, MTV, ESPN, and the Christian world was getting on it too. You had Pat Robertson with the Christian Broadcast Network, Paul Crouch with the Trinity Broadcast Network, Jim Bakker with his PTL. And with the explosion of cable TV in those days, these preachers were being exposed to audiences that were beyond the wildest dreams that anyone could have just a few years before. I mean, they were TV audiences of millions. They were instant celebrities, and again, they were bringing in loads of money that they never had to deal with before. And as the old saying goes, lots of great men of God have been brought down by the 3 G's: gold, girls, and glory. Now, a few things to remember as we seek to understand a little more is the role of the media as opposed to the role of local church in ministry. Now, obviously, I'm not opposed to media. I'm using it to talk to you right now. But when it begins to take the place of the local church, or with the ministry takes on a visibility that detaches it from the local church, you're asking for problems. No TV minister is a substitute for your local church. And when ministry fails to operate in conjunction with the local church, again, we're asking for trouble. Sending of ministry is the responsibility of the leadership of the local church. Now, sure, seminaries and Bible colleges can help in the training, but as far as establishing someone in a ministry role, again, that is to be done under the oversight of the local church. And there are biblical requirements for it to step into this field that are very high. Now, before I start into that, let me remind you that God doesn't call ministers to live differently than he calls other Christians. Ideally, every believer would be living this way, but the stakes are higher when it comes to a person in leadership, and failure to abide by these can result in a person being disqualified, in some extreme cases even for life. You can find these in the book of Titus chapter 1, as well in the book of 1 Timothy chapter 3. The requirements for someone to serve in the ministry are, number one, a person is to be blameless or above reproach. Now, does that mean you're perfect? No. But it does mean that you're a person of consistent moral character. It means that your life example is safe for others to follow. It means that you're the same person on Saturday night that you are on Sunday morning. Not given to wine. Obviously not a drunk. Someone who is disciplined in his personal habits, particularly in regards to alcohol. If you do choose to drink, then don't do it to the point of intoxication or addiction or enslavement. not greedy for money. Now, trust me, if this were consistently applied, there are lots of big name ministries who would go out of business tomorrow. Husband of one wife. He's faithful to his marriage. He is diligent in also modeling godly behavior to his children, and their life should reflect that. He's gifted to teach. Obviously, he needs to have a good, solid knowledge of the Scripture and how to communicate it properly. Not a brawler or a striker. Someone who is a peace-loving person who's not given to violent or destructive behavior. Given to hospitality, good behavior, godly behavior. He has a good report. He's temperate, sober, patient, not a novice. Obviously, a new convert is not to be a minister. That needs to be someone who is a mature, seasoned believer. And finally, he has a good reputation among those who are outside the church. People who are not part of this faith community should be able to see that this is a godly man. Again, if these principles are consistently followed, you could weed out a lot of the proverbial bad eggs, and hopefully prevent those who start off good from going bad. Now, going from the pulpit to the pew, the attitude that people could have toward ministers, especially those who fall. It's very easy to point fingers and throw stones from the sidelines when we don't know what we would do necessarily if we were put in the same position. After the PTL scandal happened, there was a fairly well-known minister who did a sermon called I Am Jim Bakker. Now, from what I understand, his wife wasn't real happy about that because it gave the impression he was doing the kind of things Jim Bakker did. But the point was, like the Apostle Paul was saying, I am the chief of sinners. The point is, none of us are any better than anyone else. None of us are any less in need of God's grace than anyone else. Finally, always remember, people fail, God doesn't. The death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus is an established historical fact, regardless of how many of his messengers may fall. So don't keep your eyes on men. Keep your eyes ultimately on Jesus. He won't lead you astray. And thanks again for watching on this premiere of our new series. And again, I would remind you to please subscribe. And if you have any suggestions for future episodes, please feel free to leave in the comments. Thanks again, and always keep it real.